Okay, we're live again, and sorry if you tuned in to the last live stream. We had some technical glitches and the audio wasn't working, but it should be working now. So hopefully it is. But if not, of course, be sure to let me know. So I was saying that I was able to get, I was not able to write any more story beats in between the live streams. So pretty much you get everything you see in these live streams is pretty much everything that happened. I think I've done a tiny bit of work here and there on this book, but pretty much what we're proving here is that it's possible to write a book in a month with just an hour or two of work a day on average, and that's really cool. So the plan for today is I'm going to be writing the story beats for 4 of these remaining chapters, and then tomorrow hopefully get 5. We're already starting a little late today, so I'm not sure how we'll do there, but hopefully by the end of this week we will have all of the story beats written out, and then starting next week we can start revising everything that I have left. I've already revised up to I think chapter 9, so we have to do from 10 on. So there's not as much, like I don't have to do the whole book or anything, but we should be starting that next week. And it is Thanksgiving in the United States next week, and so I will be taking a day or two off from the live streams, but we'll see what exactly that looks like, and then of course they'll continue the following week if all goes well. I mean, we'll make it happen no matter what. We're going to finish this book in November. But I'm not too worried at this point, because all I have to do is write these story beats and then revise them all in about 2 weeks, and we can do that for sure. So let's get into it, shall we? We'll start with chapter 20. I went ahead. The reason I started late today is because I went ahead and created all of the documents for the super prompts, all the super prompts, and all I have to do at this point is just fill in the beats for all of these. So this is everything we have left, and I also added placeholders for all the chapters as well. So coming down here, this is the summary of what chapter 20 is going to be about. So I'm just going to start writing that here in a second, as soon as my dictation software boots up. Okay. We'll turn off Pro Writing Aid so it's not making anything weird. Okay, we're ready. Or actually, I do have specifically, I want to know what happened to the bride. Oh yeah, she staked her and she died. Okay, so the bride is gone. Oh, but you know what? Now that I'm thinking about that, I need to add a note here. The bride's clothes floating to the deck. Yeah, I guess that's all we need, because I want to make sure her clothes are still around. All right, now we can start writing this. There's a lot of prep work with all of this stuff. Sometimes I wish I could just turn it on and go more often, but let's do it. Mina takes a moment to survey the situation. Period. Mina. All of the bride's minions have either been subdued, or they were killed by Van Helsing. Period. Sherlock has just come above deck, looking, for once, disheveled. And staring around in horror at the carnage around him. Period. Renfield lies dead on the deck, blood pooling from his neck where Van Helsing was feeding on him. Period. The wind is blowing the ash of the bride of Dracula into nothingness, while the bride's clothes lay crumpled on the ground. Period. New line. But most of all, Mina sees Jonathan. Period. The man is choking and shivering on the deck. Period. His eyes are wild, and Mina rushes to him. Period. Sherlock comes beside her, staring down at Jonathan. Period. He can tell from the way Jonathan is shivering, and the wound in Jonathan's neck, that Jonathan is changing, becoming a vampire. Period. It seems this time the bride intended to change him, unlike the first time when the bride and Dracula together fed on Jonathan without releasing the virus. Period. New line. Mina feels a ray of hope. Period. If Jonathan is also a vampire, she will truly have someone like her, someone with her. Period. She and Jonathan won't be so divided anymore. Period. She says as much to Sherlock, stating that if Jonathan is becoming a vampire, then he's going to be okay, period. That the wounds that he has will heal, period. New line. But then Jonathan grabs her arm, and in a choking, stammering voice, begs her to kill him, period. She is not sure what he means by this, and thinks she might have heard him wrong, period. But he shakes his head and says, that he doesn't want to be a vampire, comma, that he doesn't want to be the horror that he experienced in Castle Dracula, period. New line. Slowly, comma, the horror of what he is saying sinks into Mina, period. Despite the fact of everything they've been through, comma, Jonathan still abhors vampires, comma, enough that he would rather die than to be one, period. Enough that he would rather die than to continue at her side, period. She tells him that no, comma, no, she will not kill him, period. She cannot do that. Period. She will not, period. New line. Jonathan begs her further, comma, telling her that this is his choice, comma, and that she made hers, comma, and that he does not blame her for her choice, comma, but he would rather die than become a vampire himself, period. Once again, he begs her to kill him. Period. New line. Mina looks to Sherlock, comma, and asks him to convince Jonathan to give up this madness. Period. Sherlock only shakes his head and says it is not his place. Period. She asks him, comma, frantically, comma, to say something, period. And then she asks him what his opinion is, comma, does he think Mina should kill Jonathan just to keep him from becoming a vampire, period. Sherlock says, comma, with all honesty, comma, that he can't answer that question, comma, and that he is not sure, comma, if the situation were reversed and Sherlock was the one turning into a vampire, comma, that he would make a different decision, period. Period. Yeah. New line. Once again, comma, Jonathan asks Mina to look at him, period. She does so reluctantly. Comma. And his eyes are perfectly lucid when he tells her that this is his choice. Period. He stands up, comma, and you can tell, they can tell that he is gaining strength, comma, the strength of a vampire, period. He walks over to Mina and presses his head against hers, period. He tells her that he loves her. Period. And that he will always love her, period. And that he will wait for her, period. She is crying, comma, telling him that she can't do it, comma, she can't kill him, period. New line. Jonathan tells her that he knows that she can't kill him, comma, and before she can react, comma, he grabs one of the hawthorn stakes around her belt and plunges it into his own heart. Period. He immediately turns to ash as Mina screams. Period. The screams echo through the night. Comma, across the ocean, comma. And it seems as if everyone from there to England can hear her sorrow, period. And that is where the chapter ends, period. Woo! It's going to be a shorter chapter, probably. But I think we need that moment to kind of be its own thing. All right. Yeah, that's definitely going to be a shorter chapter. It's fine. What'd y'all think of that? I'm curious because, like, I love these scenes. I'll admit, I'm probably a little bit weird. I love feeling that emotion. And I'm sure all my characters hate me, but they should. Characters should hate their authors. Mostly because for any book to be good, there has to be lots of conflict. And for there to be lots of conflict, you have to really put your characters through the ringer. All right. That is that. So chapter 20 is written, or at least the beats are written. I'm just going to gray this out so that we can keep track of where we're at. Robin likes it. Thank you, Robin. So let's start with the next chapter. After Jonathan's death, Mina falls into deep despair, blaming herself and questioning her vampiric nature. She isolates herself from the group and considers leaving London for good. So that is where we're at. We get a narrative scene explaining that when Mina and Sherlock arrived, comma, now the only two surviving members of their party, comma, having lost Arthur and Jonathan, comma, Mina walks around in a funk, comma, numb to everything going on, period. Nothing matters anymore, comma, not the brides, comma, not the strange undead creatures they encountered in Romania, comma, not even Dracula coming back, period. None of it matters without Jonathan, period. New line. Sherlock offered to meet with her at her home, comma, but she refused, comma, leaving him the moment they arrived in London and she could get away, period. She stopped only once at John Quince Seward's house to pick up a few of her things, period. John was there, comma, and he immediately rose and asked her how the expedition went, comma, that he wasn't expecting her for a few more days, period. Mina says nothing, comma, and eventually John asks where the others are, comma, about Arthur and Jonathan, period. New line. Mina is only able to wipe her tears that are forming again, comma, and she leaves the study, comma, with Dr. Seward shouting after her, period. New line. She decides to get out of London for now, comma, she spends her nights roaming the streets aimlessly, period. Unable to comma, while hiding in attics, comma, abandoned warehouses, comma, and slums during the day, period. One night she is out, comma, trying to distract herself from Jonathan's death and the last things he said to her, period. it still hurts that he would rather die than become a vampire like her, comma, and now that he is dead, comma, she has no one, period. She is completely alone, period. Even the other vampires would see her dead rather than period. And so she hunts the denizens of the streets to keep her mind off of things, period. As she patrols, comma, she hears a child screaming, period. She rushes to find the source of the sound, comma, only to find a young man, comma, not William, who she had met earlier, comma, but another young boy in distress, period. He is being manhandled by, dragged along by a burly man Mina doesn't recognize, comma, but is exactly the type she has run into before, period. The man is shouting at the boy to be quiet, comma, and threatens him with worse if he does not behave, period. He mentions that someone is paying good money for him. Mina feels rage build inside her, period. This is exactly the kind of filth that she hates, comma, exactly the type of person who, comma, though he is not a vampire, comma, is exactly the type of person that she would exterminate from the world if she could, period. Before the man can see her, comma, she leaps and catches him in one fell swoop, comma, knocking him away from the young boy, period. Then, comma, rather than sinking her fangs into his neck, comma, she hits him again and again, comma, letting her rage out, period. Her supernatural strength makes short work of the man, comma, who falls unconscious immediately, comma, and blood splatters everywhere, period. She is about to feed on the blood, comma, when she hears screaming, comma, and realizes it is the young boy, period. She turns to look at the boy, comma, who is looking at her in horror, comma, thoroughly traumatized by what he has just witnessed, period. Mina tries to tell him that it's okay, comma, that she's there to help, comma. But the boy runs off before she can convince him of anything, period. New line. Looking back at the man she has just beaten, comma, she staggers backward in horror at what she has just done, period. She wonders if Jonathan was right, comma, and it would be better if there were no vampires in the world, period. Perhaps she is destined to be a villain, comma, no matter how hard she fights it, period. Suddenly sick to her stomach, comma, and no longer craving blood, comma, she staggers out of the alley and would have vomited had she been a mere human, period. New line. Instead, she sobs, comma, crying for Jonathan, comma, for herself, comma, for Arthur, comma, and even for Lucy, period. Crying for everyone who has lost their lives. To her and other vampires like her, period. New line. Perhaps it would be better if she wasn't there anymore, period. She retreats back to her empty attic, comma, sits and hugs her knees in a fetal position, period. She thinks of Abraham Van Helsing, comma, and wonders where he is, period. He too witnessed the horrors that he caused as a vampire, comma, when he fed on mortals for the first time, period. How is he dealing with that situation? Question mark. Is he still in a mad rage, comma, has he lost his humanity like he feared? Question mark. Was he right to suspect that all vampires were killers in the end? Question mark. New line. Mina begins to is plagued by these thoughts for the rest of the night, comma, and the next day, comma, and the next night, period. She doesn't move from her attic, period. Her hunger increases, comma, but she ignores it, period. Over time, comma, she begins to contemplate what Jonathan would do in her situation, period. Then she realizes that Jonathan was in her situation, comma, and he had asked for her to kill him, period. She begins to wonder if it would be better if she was no longer around, period. Then there would be no little children screaming at her in alleyways, comma. There would be no more men beaten to a pulp because of her, period. And if she were lucky, comma, she would be reunited with Jonathan again, period. But she knows that she would not be so lucky, comma, that people like her were reserved for a very special place in hell, comma, and if anyone were to go to heaven, comma, it would be Jonathan, period. New line. Just then, comma, there's a rap of a cane beating against the entrance to the attic, period. Mina tenses, comma, but relaxes as she hears Sherlock's voice come from beneath, comma, telling her, open quote, Mrs. Harker, comma, we need to talk, period, close quote. And that is the last line of the chapter, period. All right. It's probably going to be another short chapter, but that's all right. Sometimes when you get to the end, the chapters get a little shorter, and that's actually a good thing because as people are reading, they feel like they're making more progress, and they're like, it's like, oh, I got to read another one and another one and another one. Granted, we're not really at the end yet, but okay. Yeah, this is essentially the part where the bad guys are closing in. I forget exactly what the description of this scene, this chapter is in the 24 chapter novel. But this is essentially like in the belly of the beast. It's like the worst moment, right? And then what we're about to get from Sherlock is the pep talk. Everybody has a pep talk at some point from an ally. And that's what Sherlock's essentially going to provide. And then the chapter after that is called, I think it's called Seizing the Sword, I believe, where the hero starts to get ready. I was debating whether she would have suicidal thoughts there, because I'm always hesitant to go with suicide just because it can be a trigger for some people. And so I'll be sure to put a trigger warning in front of this book, but it did kind of make the most sense that that's where her mind would go given the situation. But yeah, it's a bad day. It's a very, very bad day. Let's see, what is this one called? This chapter, Giving Up. So yeah, there's usually a moment where the hero gives up. So now we'll move on to chapter 2. Robin asks, are there always two battles? I'm not sure what you mean by that. You're talking like an external and an internal battle? Because not necessarily. Depends on the type of book you're writing, and there can be many battles. But at the end here, there is kind of like a personal climax and then an external climax where, like, this is the real battle being fought right here. It's internal. And it's only after she's able to get over that internal battle that she has the strength and the wherewithal to defeat the external threat, right? Because the thing that she's kind of been dealing with this whole book is like, can I be a good vampire, basically? Like, is this okay? Am I kidding myself? And by the end of the book, she's going to have a little bit of a transformation. But yeah. So let's move on to chapter 2. I'm now thinking that we will be able to get through all of these, although that's partially because these last few chapters that I wrote the beats for have been shorter. Let's see. That was 900 words, which is about what all of my story beats have been lately, at least. So yeah. So moving on to chapter 22. This one is the pep talk. Sherlock tracks down Mina and helps her see that she cannot give up now when so many lives are at stake. He reminds her of her own strength and humanity despite being a vampire. He also points out that she could disguise herself as the missing bride, as the other brides will have no idea that their sister has died. So yes, this is going to be an important conversation. And I'm not entirely certain how it should go. In fact, let's bring this to Claude, shall we? Can you give me the main points of the conversation that that should happen in this chapter based on the following summary? Paste that in. Oh, seriously, Claude? You're going to do that? Freeze on me. Oh. Well, there it is again. Weird. No. Can you add put a few in there that would logically fit together. This might not work, but hey. Oh, this is actually not too bad. All right. Reluctantly, Mina opens the trapdoor to the attic, and lets Sherlock in, period. At first, she asks him how he found her, but then immediately says, never mind, because of course he did. He is Sherlock Holmes, period. Then she asks, curtly, open quote, what do you want, question mark, close quote, new line. Sherlock tells her that he hasn't been able to contact Watson since they arrived, period. Apparently, Watson left for Devonshire. But Sherlock has no idea where he is now, period. He also tells her that the brides are still in London, he confirmed this, and that they are still in the London Underground, but obviously they have not proceeded with their plans yet, period. New line. Mina tells him that obviously they haven't proceeded with their plans, because they needed the ashes of Dracula, which were likely held by the bride that they killed on the ship home, period. Sherlock shakes his head, and tells her that he searched the ship thoroughly, and found no such ashes, period. He hypothesizes that there were actually two brides in Romania, and the second came another way, rather than risk shipping the ashes of Dracula to England on the same ship with Mina and Van Helsing on it, because if they were to lose those ashes from someone throwing them overboard, all would be lost for them, period. New line. Mina lets that sink in, but she is still depressed about Jonathan's death, so she says nothing, period. Inwardly, she doesn't really care too much what happens with the brides, period. Sherlock seems to sense her thoughts, comma, and asks her if she doesn't want revenge for what happened to Jonathan, period. And Arthur, period. Mina replies that of course she wants revenge, comma, but doesn't see much point at this point, period. She cynically suggests that she, comma, Mina, comma, would just replace them as the next bad vampire, period. Plaguing London, period. New line. Sherlock stays quiet for a moment, comma, clearly seeing that Mina is not in good spirits, comma, and is blaming herself for everything that is happening, comma, and blaming the fact that she is a vampire, period. He tells her that Jonathan's decision was unfortunate for the rest of them, comma, but it does not define Mina's decisions or invalidate the decisions that Mina has made, period. Mina replies that Sherlock didn't see the man she almost killed in the streets that night, period. She tells him that she is a monster, period. New line. Sherlock then proceeds to tell her a story. And at this point, I'm going to take this. I'm going to say, can you give me ideas for the story Sherlock will tell? Because it's late, guys. I got nothing. It must be a metaphor for how Mina is a vampire, normally thought of as a bad thing, but demonstrate how bad things can be used for good too. Oh gosh. Once upon a time. I meant a story from Sherlock's own life of a bad person doing or using his position to do good. Something like that. You don't need to tell me the whole story in Sherlock's words. Just give me the basic beats of the story. And let's switch it to be about a gang member who Sherlock encountered once, who is now, or who later reformed and fed him and the police secret information. That's not too bad. All right, not perfect, but I can work with that. About a man he once encountered. Named Victor. And that Victor had previously become a member of one of the worst gangs in London, period. But Victor was intelligent, and over time he rose through the ranks and eventually became one of the top bodyguards for one of London's notorious crime bosses, period. New line. Sherlock tells Mina that he wouldn't have thought much of Victor, except for the fact that Victor eventually began sending coded messages and anonymous tips to him and John Watson, tips that eventually allowed him, over the years, to take down that particular crime syndicate. Period. He had joined the gang, not because he was a bad person, but because he and his family were literally dying, period. Starving, and they were the only people he could turn to help. But over time, Victor eventually grew dissatisfied with the type of work he was assigned, and rather than period, and yet, there was no way for him to get out of it, period. He was, essentially, owned by this particular crime syndicate, period. If he were to leave or give them up to the police, he he and his family would likely have been assassinated. Period. And so, comma, being an intelligent man, comma, he decided to take a different approach, period. Mina asks him what all of that has to do with her, comma, and Sherlock tells her that she is like Victor, period. She became something she did not want to be against her will, comma, but because of circumstance, period. And like Victor, comma, she has done some horrible things, period. But also like Victor, comma, she has an opportunity to make things right in a way that no one else can, period. Her gifts as a vampire allow her to go places and do things that no one else can, period. New line. Mina wonders at that, comma, but still would rather not help Sherlock, comma, so she tells him to go find Van Helsing and get him to help instead, comma, since he is also a vampire, period. Sherlock says that, comma, unfortunately, comma, Van Helsing has either fled the city, comma, or is dead, comma, period. Mina asks why he can't find him if he is supposed to be such a great detective, period. Sherlock replies that he doesn't think Mina truly understands the urgency of the situation, period. He does not have time to search all of England for Van Helsing, period. But Mina is here now. And she is able to help now. Period. New line. Mina stares into the middle distance and says that she is scared to help, period. She is scared that she will only prove herself to be a monster, period. Sherlock tells her that she is defined only by her actions, comma, not what she is, comma. and that Jonathan would want her to keep going. Period. New line. Mina stays silent, so Sherlock continues and asks her what was the last thing that Jonathan said to her. Period. She softly says, open quote, that the last thing he said was, "I love you." Period. Sherlock points out that he can see no clearer evidence that Mina has a soul. Period. When she asks what he means, he clarifies by saying, Jonathan hated vampires, and had been plagued by them, and yet he still chose to love one. Period. Would he have loved someone who had no soul? Period. He then emphasizes that Mina can use her powers for good. Period. It may be hard, it may be harder than anything else she has done in her life, but it is possible. Period. New line. Sherlock produces something from his satchel, and Mina recognizes it as the outfit worn by the bride she had killed on board the ship. Period. Sherlock hands it to her and points out that if she could disguise herself as the missing bride, currently the other brides have no idea that their sister is dead. Period. It is the perfect opportunity for Mina to sneak in, and sabotage the bride's plans, whether that is removing the Pied Piper's flute, or the ashes of Dracula. Period. New line. Sherlock stands up and begins to leave the attic, pausing only to mention that he will be at Dr. Seward's study should she need him, and invites her to join them that night, because they must move against the brides before they can enact their plan, which means, ideally, they need to act tonight. Period. He then leaves Mina holding the dress, and that is where the chapter ends. Period. All right, Fazio, I hear you. I had a that in there. Oh, that was supposed to be at that. Sometimes the transcription doesn't get it quite right. All right, so that's how many words? 1,000 words. Moving right along. Should be enough time to get one more. Conversations are always like harder for me to do. I have to think about it more. Sherlock. I probably should read through these beats a little more to make sure there's no major issues with the transcription, because I'm not really watching it closely as I do it. Ray of Light says, I love what Van Helsing said about Jonathan and Mina. I love it too, although just point out that that's Sherlock talking, not Van Helsing. And yeah, you will have to catch the replay. The last 2 chapters before this, some serious crap went down. My favorite. Okay. Get immediately into Mina's deep point of view with lots of description. Boom. Okay. That's chapter 22. Last one of the evening. And then tomorrow we should be able to finish up the rest of it. Same time. All right, so chapter 23. Seizing the sword. Inspired by Sherlock's pep talk, Mina decides to do it. She takes on the clothing and veil of the bride and decides to infiltrate the lair of the brides, which Sherlock has already identified on his own. I want to glance at the chapter after this so I know like where it's going. Ultimate defeat. The rats are unleashed into London and people start to become zombies. All right, so there's a lot to flesh out there. So we've had the like internal personal conflict here. And in the chapter I'm about to write the beats for, it's called Seizing the Sword, where they kind of get ready to take on the external threat. But then the chapter after that is like the big failure of the external threat as well. You'll see that in pretty much every movie ever. But I guess, we don't have to worry about that because I'm not going to get to that tonight. All right. Let's move on to the last chapter of the evening. Since it is daytime, Mina spends some time walking back and forth inside the attic, as she can't leave, period. She mulls over everything Sherlock said to her and wonders if Jonathan really did think she had a soul, and if he really loved her at all, period. But then she remembers the way he held her, and the way he kissed her, and she realizes that there was something there, even though he was hesitant to show it, period. New line. Suddenly she feels like she wants to slap her forehead, period. She wonders what she has been doing this whole time, feeling sorry for herself, period. Jonathan would want her fighting the brides of Dracula, the actual sources of his distress, and the actual reason that he asked to die rather than become a vampire, period. New line. Feeling determined, she quickly dresses into the robes of the vampire she had staked on board the ship, period. She notices that Sherlock had stitched together the hole in the dress where the stake had gone, and it was immaculately clean and tidy, period. And she finds it to be a perfect fit, and wonders if Sherlock had somehow known her measurements and adjusted the dress to fit, period. She wouldn't put it past him, given his powers of observation, period. New line. She exits the abandoned house where she has been staying. The moment the sun is down, even though there is still sunlight illuminating the city, she realizes that it cannot wait, and she leaves the moment she knows the sunlight will not harm her, period. She makes her way, as quickly as possible, to Dr. Seward's study. Period. New line. She throws open the doors to find Dr. Seward and Sherlock sitting across from each other. At the dining table, period. Sherlock gives her a smile and a nod as she enters, and she notes that he doesn't seem surprised at all to see her, period. New line. Dr. Seward is more surprised, comma, but at Sherlock's prompting, comma, hastily grabs a chair for Mina to sit, period. New line. Mina sits down and can already see various papers on the table with sketches of the London Underground, period. She asks Sherlock to fill her in, period. Sherlock explains, points to a spot on the map where an abandoned station is located, comma, and states that this is where the brides are holed up, period. They have ready access to all of the rats that they need, comma, they are protected from sunlight, comma, and it is the perfect place for them to launch an attack on the city, comma, since the underground tunnels give ready access to any corner of London, period. New line. Mina asks what her job will be, period. Dr. Seward responds that she really has one objective, comma, to slow the brides down, comma, and that under no circumstances should she engage with the brides unless she has no other choice, period. Her job is to grab the Pied Piper's pipe, comma, or find Dracula's ashes and take those away, comma, preferably both, period. Without either, comma, the brides will not be able to enact their plan to turn the entire city into those undead creatures, comma, and use that as them in a ritual to bring back Dracula, period. New line. Mina asks how she will keep them from recognizing her, period. Sherlock produces a black veil, comma, and comments that many of the times he has seen the brides in person, comma, they are wearing a veil around their face, period. He is not sure if this is to cover their pale complexion, comma, to be less noticeable, comma, or if they even use it in daylight, period. But it works in their favor, comma, as Mina can wear the veil without causing alarm, period. New line. Mina takes the veil and accompanying headdress and it places it on her head. Period. Sherlock replies that if he didn't know it was her, comma, he would have thought it was one of the brides themselves. Period. Mina notes something he said earlier, comma, asking how he has managed to see the brides in public, period. Sherlock replies that he has been monitoring the brides ever since they returned, comma, and had been monitoring them for some time before they even left for Romania, period. He tells them that he is very good at disguises, comma, and none of the brides ever noticed he was there, period. New line. Mina asks what happens if she gets caught, comma. And Sherlock replies that she should run, comma. That she is unlikely to be able to take on two highly experienced vampires on her own, comma, and reminds her of the fight in the auction house and how that ended, period. Mina nods. Comma, and Sherlock adds that should combat be necessary, comma, he trusts in Mina's strength, period. There is a reason she is the one going in and not Dr. Seward or himself, period. Mina thanks him for his vote of confidence. And asks when they should be ready to go, period. Sherlock replies only by saying, comma, open quote, now, period, close quote, new line. Dr. Seward hastily asks where Sherlock about Dr. Helsing, period. It appears Sherlock had filled him in that they did in fact find Abraham, comma, but that he had fled after the incident on the ship, period. Sherlock replies that they cannot count on Van Helsing to help, comma, and unfortunately the same can be said for Dr. Watson, who was searching for the werewolves, period. Sherlock seems concerned that Watson has not returned by now, comma, but exhibits full trust in his partner to come through, period. Nevertheless, they have to. He says this is why they are not conducting a full frontal assault on the London Underground, where the brides are holed up, period. Perhaps with werewolves they could do that, comma, but without them they must merely resort to trying delay tactics, period. Hence why Mina is only searching for Dracula's acid Ashes or the Magic Flute. Period. New line. With that, comma, Mina stands, period, and says that they have wasted too much time already, period. She tells them that she is ready, comma, and that it was time to proceed into the underground, comma, which is where the chapter ends, period. All right. I'm doing a good job of being kind of consistent with the word count of each of these story beats. They're all like within 800 to 1,000 words. Pretty good, Gia. Thank you. And welcome. I know we've been doing a lot of stuff here tonight. We just got the fourth and final story beats of the evening. This is one that I think if you missed some of the first chapters, I recommend you go back and watch the replay, because some crazy stuff went down and it was glorious. But that about does it for the story beats for this one. Maybe we can go ahead. I still need to generate a few chapters from last time that I didn't get to. Maybe we'll do one and see how it goes. Something I realized I've kind of neglected, and I can't believe I did this, but I'm pretty sure in my instructions for these chapters, I'm not giving the AI a role, which is crazy. So I think 17 is the next one I need to actually generate. I have the beats for it, but so I'm going to take this super prompt and try something. You are a best-selling novelist with hundreds of books to your name. I don't know, that might be. And, you know, that one line could maybe make a difference. I don't know. But we're about to find out. Certainly be doing fine without it. Oh, this is not bad so far. Although, hang on, what's actually supposed to be happening here? Oh, yeah, talking to Adele. Or Adela. So it forgot. That's the thing. I've been writing each of these chapters in a vacuum, and it doesn't always remember what happened. So maybe I should. I mean, that wouldn't be hard to edit. Yeah. It's okay. I'm not thrilled. Let's just try it again. See if it does any better. This isn't bad. Yeah, this might work. We'll see how. Okay, this is now it's starting to get weird. Where is this supposed to end? Oh yeah, with them just looking at her. So that's weird. Okay. Yeah, it got weird at the end. It was okay. It was doing okay. Let me get a rough estimate of how many words it gave me. 14. It's not too bad. I'll try again later. All right, guys. It's that time, so I've got to be heading out. We'll definitely do more finishing up all of the beats tomorrow, and then we can start editing this thing. Everything I've already edited 9 or 10 chapters, but then we'll just edit the rest of them. So that's exciting. We'll see how much we're able to do in a week or two, and I'll see you then. Thanks again. Sorry for the tardy people out there that I'm stopping so early, but go ahead and watch the replay. There's some good stuff today. So thank you all for being